Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Well, I think the Obama administration had a great opportunity to solve this crisis a long time ago when he said the red line in the sand. And when he didn't cross that line after making the threat, I think that set us back a long ways, not only in Syria, but in many other parts of the world, because it was a blank threat. I think it was something that was not one of our better days as a country. So I do feel that, Julie. I feel it very strongly.
Do you feel like you now have the responsibility to respond to the chemical attack?
I now have responsibility, and I will have that responsibility and carry it very proudly. I will tell you that. It is now my responsibility. It was a great opportunity missed.
Before I move on to the king, can I just quickly ask you if the chemical attack crosses a red line for you?
It crossed a lot of lines for me. When you kill innocent children, innocent babies, little babies, with a chemical gas that is so lethal, people were shocked to hear what gas it was. That crosses many, many lines, beyond the red line, many, many lines.
Oh, no. Oh, no. All right, let's start at the top. Trump's approval rating is in the toilet. Since March, Since March, he has plummeted 11 percentage points. If his approval ratings get any lower, we won't be able to call them approval ratings. We will have to call it the countdown to zero, or the disapproval-o-meter, or the disgust-o-meter. It won't be called approval ratings any longer. His approval rating is 34%. That is down 11 points since March. If this were a parliamentary system, he would have to call for an election, and he would have to be thrown out. Now, I know a lot of people don't understand the parliamentary system, so let's say something that you do understand. If this was TV, he'd be canceled. You're fired. You're fired. Donald is fired. But you know who got fired? Bannon got fired. Bannon. And that freaks me out because there are so many reasons why Bannon shouldn't have been there, and there's so many reasons why Bannon got fired. But, okay, do you think it had something to do with the Eric Prince story we went over yesterday, where Eric Prince was in a meeting with the Russian government that was brokered by the UAE, the Crown Prince and his brother in the UAE, and subsequently, after Eric Prince's meeting, Bannon then meets with the same people, and does it have something to do with that? Does it have to do with the fact that Jared Kushner is now, he's got a huge portfolio, they say. Ivanka's got a huge portfolio. They're in charge of, everything. They're in charge of Canada. They're in charge of Mexico. They're in charge of the VA. They're in charge of Middle East peace. Do you think that maybe Jared doesn't want to work with Bannon? You think maybe Ivanka doesn't want to work with Bannon? Do you think maybe the FBI is getting so close in their investigation that they have tracked the stolen Russian hacked voter rolls to Cambridge Analytica, the Mercer family who owns Breitbart, that employed Bannon? Or
you're out, Tom. You're not a wartime consigliere, Tom.
could it be that Tom is out because he's not a wartime consigliere and we're going to war? And General McMaster said, all right, you know what, Trump, you need a wartime consigliere. I cannot work with this Bannon dude. I can't do it. I can't have it. I can't be there. Because Bannon has now been set. You know, the crazy thing about the way that they set up the National Security Council in the White House was Bannon was on it. And other people that were considered principals prior to this crazy presidency, they were allowed in only by invitation only. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the director of the National Intelligence Agency. They had to be invited to the national security meetings where Bannon and Jared were. There was a story a couple days ago. We didn't do it because it was not that it was a small detail. It was really insulting though to McMaster, who is the replacement for Flynn. I know it's hard. This is hard. But McMaster is the replacement for Flynn, who was fired after 24 days. My half and half lasts longer. Cream even longer than Flynn. Okay. But McMaster was the replacement for Flynn, and McMaster wanted to bring his own people in, and Bannon said no, and Trump said no. And they said, okay, your punishment is going to be that you, McMaster, can only come to the meetings when you're invited. He's fired from the National Security Council. He's not part of he's still in the White House. He didn't lose his paycheck, but he is off of the National Security Council. He's been fired from that post, removed from that post. Please don't interrupt me. I know what I'm talking about. So here you have this new order that was dated Tuesday, made public today, that removes Steve Bannon from the Principals Committee and restores the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the intelligence director, and also adds, believe it or not, Rick Perry, the energy secretary in charge of nuclear arms, the CIA director, and our UN ambassador, Nikki Haley.
You're out, Tom. You're not a wartime consigliere, Tom.
Because he's not a wartime consigliere. That's why he's out. Tom didn't get fired either. He was just moved over to a different post. Same thing. You're out. You're out. Go stand in the hallway. So I got a funny feeling of all the choices, that the FBI's hot on the trail, that the Eric Prince story was really as important as I thought it was, that the stolen goods that the Russians hacked, the voter rolls, were given to Cambridge Analytica, who was able then to use all these, all this information to, with precision, pinpoint likely voters for Hillary Clinton in the swing states, eking out a very marginal win for Donald Trump, but a win nonetheless in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and it's getting really, really close to Bannon because the Mercers own Cambridge and the Mercers own Breitbart, and, they own Bannon, obviously, and they'll all go down together if that's the true story. Or it could be that Jared doesn't like working with Bannon. Ivanka doesn't like working with Bannon. I remember back in the time of the actual campaign, there were rumors that, those two did not like Steve Bannon. Or what's more likely, as far as I can see, is that, little Bannon there is not a wartime consigliere. And we're going to war. Why? Because his approval ratings suck. That's why. His approval rating, and Sean Spicer has this is amazing. Sean Spicer's approval rating is 20%. Bannon's approval rating is 11%. And you know what's really sick? Trump takes joy in that. That Trump says, oh, well, at least I'm not the most hated person in America. I'm not the most unpopular guy. Bannon's the most unpopular guy. Bannon, you're being around Jews like poison. You're out. You're out. You're not a wartime consigliere. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump forces Sean Spicer to mention at the press conference that his approval rating is lower than Trump's. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes Sean Spicer say that and why is Bannon now? Because he only had an 11% approval rating and Donald Trump doesn't like losers. I just can't. But honest to God, today was like the most amazing day as far as knowing we're going to war. It's just so interesting that Bannon is removed from his national security post. And instead, you've got Trump inviting in the real warfighters and Rick Perry, who's in charge of our nuclear arsenal, after saying really crazy things like, he's going to meet with President Xi at Mar-a-Lago tomorrow. We're not going to play golf, but if China won't do something about North Korea, we'll go it alone. Nikki Haley, saying, hey, if Russia doesn't do something about Syria, we're ready to do something without the UN Security Council. Although Rex Tillerson is out there saying, that, the Syrian people should decide their fate. We really don't want to get involved in Syria. And then you have, Donald Trump today meeting with the president of Jordan, King Abdullah, and not, saying that, all the responsibility is his now. It's on his shoulders, although he blames Obama. Of course, he blames Obama. Even though when Obama was asking, you do remember what happened. I don't know if you do or not. But in 2012, when Damascus was sarin gassed, it had like 1,000 people killed by sarin gas. And Obama went out to the Rose Garden also. And Obama said, I'm taking military action in Syria. I don't know if you remember this. So, they like to lie about Obama did nothing and this is all his fault, whatever. But Obama then went to Congress. And Obama asked Congress for a resolution to attack Syria. And Congress, Republicans, in 2013, it was Republican, said no. Republicans said no. So that's why we didn't go to war in Syria. So then Obama brokered a deal with Russia, who is, Syria is a client literally, of Russia's client state. And Obama went to Russia and said, listen, I really do want to attack Syria, and that means you, and I'm not afraid of you, and blah, 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 and you can't intimidate us, and what you did was a war crime, and you're endorsing war crimes, and we know it, and we're going to take them out. We're going to take out your client. And Russia said, whoa, just wait. Here's what we could do. We could go into Syria, and we could take all the chemical weapons. We'll make sure they're gone. And since we didn't have a Congress that was willing to go along with President Obama, that was the best deal we could get. So we took that. Of course, Russia didn't do it, as you saw yesterday. But let me just play you Obama, just so you remember.
After careful deliberation, I have decided that the United States should take military action against Syrian regime targets.
See?
Before launching military action, American presidents generally hope to draw support from three places: Congress, the American people, and allies abroad. In the case of a possible military strike in Syria, support appears to be in short supply.
CIA, hands off Syria! USA, CIA, hands off Syria!
Recent polls indicate that a majority of the American public does not support military action against Syria. Similar polls showed greater support for the intervention in Libya in 2011 and for the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Mr. Obama faced criticism from some lawmakers that he didn't adequately consult Congress before committing American troops to the battle in Libya. And when he was a senator, Mr. Obama himself was a vocal critic of military involvement in Iraq.
This is not America. This is not who we are. It's time for us to stand up and tell George Bush that the government in this country is not based on the whims of one person. The government is of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Though he has now called on Congress to authorize a limited strike in Syria, he still appears to lack the broad support of international allies.
So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock!
Last week, even the British Parliament voted against taking military action. The administration argues that the atrocities in Syria are so grave that the United States and the international community must act.
Instead of being tucked safely in their beds at home, we saw rows of children lying side by side, sprawled on a hospital floor, all of them dead from Assad's gas and surrounded by parents and grandparents who had suffered the same fate.
We would not put boots on the ground. Instead, our action would be designed to be limited in duration and scope.
Lawmakers are set to take up the issue when Congress returns to Washington on September 9th.
Yeah, and they voted no. So there you have it. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing. And Trump, keeps saying Obama did nothing. Congress did nothing, and the American people were against it. And Congress said no, and America took a sigh of relief and said, okay, good. But now you've got Nikki Haley over at the UN today making the most emotional speech that you could possibly make. It was just like John Kerry. John Kerry was in tears when he showed those pictures of the, dead children and their parents side by side in Damascus in 2012. In 2013, we went to the Obama administration went to Congress. Congress said no. And like I said, the best thing that they could get was a brokered deal with Russia, saying that, because Russia is in charge of Assad. And Russia props up Assad. Without Russia, Assad, has no ability to do anything. All the weapons, all the airplanes, Now, I just have a funny feeling that when you have a president with a 34% approval rating, and he's replacing Steve Bannon, who is, he's a fake news entrepreneur. That's what Steve Bannon is, a fake news entrepreneur. How dare he assume the role of a national security advisor? And then, the story was last week that McMaster came into a national security briefing. He was included. He was invited. And so he walked in, and Jared Kushner was sitting in the seat that usually the Joint Chiefs would be sitting in, and McMaster had no place to sit. So he sat against the wall instead of around the table as a principal. I mean, that's pretty strange stuff. So now Bannon's seat will probably be occupied by a general, and General McMaster is probably being brought in to, get all the branches and the nuclear arsenal ready for whatever Trump's madness brings to Syria or Iran or Russia. I mean, here's the thing. If we start this, just know this. If you start anything in Syria, if we do anything in Syria, we are fighting Russia by proxy. Just know that. Iran, Syria, and Russia, they are all together. States like these constitute an axis of evil. Yeah. And how much good did war do us conquering the last axis of evil, okay? So it's not the solution. There's sanctions. There's a million diplomatic things. But, of course, we have no State Department. We have Jared Kushner and Rex Tillerson who said, let the people of Syria decide their fate. So, I mean, the mixed messages are more mixed than, than normal. It's like, it's like scrambled eggs that comes out of this administration. And, of course, Trump was tweeting all through 2013 when Obama was trying to get permission to do this. Don't waste your powder. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.